Hey, I'm Jack, a 36-year-old sales executive living in a suburb of Chicago. Life was pretty ordinary until everything fell apart. I met Eleanor when I was 25 at a friend's barbecue. She was 22, beautiful, and introverted. We clicked immediately, and our relationship grew slowly, mostly because of her past with an abusive ex. We dated for a few years, got engaged, and moved into a house I inherited from my grandparents. Things were great at first. We were happy, and I felt like I had found the one. But then my job started demanding more travel, and that's when things changed. Eleanor, now a stay-at-home mom, seemed distant. Thought it was just stress from me being away so much. She started spending more nights at her sister Lisa's place, saying she needed the company. At first, I didn't think much of it. Lisa lived close by, and they had always been close, but then I noticed how often she was gone, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. One night, while I was on a business trip, I got a call from Lisa. Her voice was shaky as she told me Eleanor was in the hospital. She'd been assaulted by a man identified as her boyfriend. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My mind raced as I booked the earliest flight back home. When I got to the hospital, Officer Mike explained what happened. Eleanor had been seeing another man, and things turned violent. She was pregnant, and the guy she was seeing was the father. I felt my world shatter. Lisa filled in the details. Eleanor had reconnected with her ex, the one who had abused her before. He convinced her he had changed. Their affair started emotionally, but soon turned physical. When Eleanor tried to end it after discovering she was pregnant, he assaulted her. I couldn't wrap my head around it. The betrayal, the danger she put herself in, it was all too much. In that moment, my life as I knew it ended. All I could think about was what to do next and how to protect our son. So, after the shock of discovering Eleanor's affair, I was left to figure out what to do next. The hospital room was cold and sterile, mirroring how I felt inside. I sat next to Eleanor's bed, her face bruised and eyes filled with regret. It was hard to reconcile this broken person with the woman I once loved. "Jack," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you." I didn't know what to say. My mind was a jumble of anger, confusion, and betrayal. "Why, Eleanor? Why didn't you come to me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She looked away, tears streaming down her face. Thought he changed. I was scared and confused. When I found out I was pregnant, I wanted to end it, but he wouldn't let me go. We sat in silence, the weight of her words sinking in. I knew I had to make some tough decisions. The first step was to get Eleanor out of the hospital and somewhere safe. Lisa offered to let her stay at her place for a while, which seemed like the best option for now. Back home, the emptiness was overwhelming. Tried to focus on work, but my mind kept drifting back to the hospital. How could I fix this? How could we move forward? One evening, I sat down with Lisa to discuss our next steps. "We need to think about what's best for Eleanor and the baby," Lisa said, her voice steady. "I know," I replied, rubbing my temples, "but I don't know if I can stay with her after all this. The trust is gone." Lisa nodded. "I get it, Jack, but you both need to decide what's best for the baby. Counseling might help, at least to figure out how to co-parent." I agreed to give it a try, though my heart wasn't in it. We started therapy sessions, but every meeting felt like reopening old wounds. Eleanor was remorseful, but I couldn't move past the betrayal. During one session, our therapist asked, "Jack, what do you need to heal?" Took a deep breath. "I don't know if I can heal with Eleanor. I feel like I've lost the person I married." Eleanor's face crumpled, but she nodded. "I understand. I just want what's best for our baby." Those words echoed in my mind. Despite everything, our son deserved the best we could give him. Deciding to divorce was one of the hardest choices I've made, but it felt like the right one. We set up a co-parenting plan, and Eleanor moved back with her parents. The house felt emptier than ever, but I knew I had to keep moving forward, one step at a time. The divorce was finalized, and Eleanor moved back with her parents. Our son, Jake, was a constant reminder of our failed marriage, but also the reason I had to keep going. Co-parenting wasn't easy. The logistics, the emotions, and the constant communication with Eleanor were draining. One day, after dropping Jake off at Eleanor's, she stopped me at the door. "Jack, can we talk for a minute?" I nodded, though I wasn't sure what more there was to say. We sat at the kitchen table, a place that once held happy family meals. "Look, I know things are rough," Eleanor said, her eyes earnest, "but I want us to be the best parents we can for Jake. Can we at least try to be civil?" I sighed. "I'm trying, Eleanor. It's just hard. Every time I see you, it's like reliving the betrayal." She nodded. "I get it. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just a chance to make co-parenting work." We agreed to set boundaries and communicate only about Jake. It was a small step, but it made things a bit easier. Meanwhile, work became my escape. The sales targets, client meetings, and business trips kept my mind occupied. But the loneliness crept in during quiet moments. I missed having someone to share my life with. One evening, I wandered into a bookstore downtown, looking for something to read on an upcoming flight. As I browsed the shelves, I noticed a woman engrossed in a book about ancient Egypt. Intrigued, I struck up a conversation. "Interesting choice," I said. "Are you an Egyptology buff?" She looked up, smiling. "You could say that. I'm Olivia, a professor of Egyptian studies at the local university." We chatted for a while, and I felt a connection I hadn't felt in years. Olivia was smart, kind, and had a way of making me forget my troubles. A few weeks later, I mustered the courage to ask her out. Over dinner, we shared our stories. She had been through a tough breakup herself and understood the challenges of starting over. "Do you think it's possible to truly move on?" I asked her. Olivia smiled. "I think it's possible to find happiness again. It's not about forgetting the past, but learning to live with it." Her words resonated with me. We continued seeing each other, and slowly, I felt my heart healing. Olivia brought light back into my life, something I hadn't thought possible. But not everyone was happy with my new relationship. Eleanor's calls became more frequent and intrusive, questioning my decisions regarding Jake and sometimes veering into personal territory. "Jack, are you sure this is what's best for Jake?" she asked one evening. "I just don't want him to be confused." Took a deep breath. "Eleanor, Jake deserves to see us both happy. Olivia is a positive influence, and she cares about him too. We need to focus on being good co-parents, not on each other's personal lives." It wasn't easy, but I knew I had to stand firm. Olivia and I were building something special, and I couldn't let the past destroy my future. Life with Olivia was going well, but co-parenting with Eleanor continued to be challenging. The tension seemed to escalate every time we met. I was determined to keep things peaceful for Jake's sake, but it wasn't easy. One Saturday, Eleanor called me just as Olivia and I were about to take Jake to the zoo. "Jack, I need to talk to you. It's important." I could hear the urgency in her voice. "Okay, what's up? Can you come over?" It's about Jake's schooling. I glanced at Olivia, who nodded in understanding. Sure, I'll be there in a few minutes. When I arrived, Eleanor was waiting at the door, looking more anxious than usual. Jake's teacher called. They're concerned about his behavior. He's been acting out in class, and they think it might be because of the changes at home. I sighed, feeling the weight of the situation. I'll talk to him. Maybe we can figure out what's going on. We sat down with Jake in his room. He was fidgeting with his toys, avoiding eye contact. Hey, buddy, I said softly. Your mom tells me you've been having a hard time at school. Do you want to talk about it? Jake shrugged. I just miss how things used to be. His words hit me hard. I know, Jake. It's been tough for all of us, but your mom and I both love you very much. We're here for you, no matter what. Eleanor chimed in, her voice gentle. We're going to figure this out together, okay? Jake nodded, and for the first time in a while, I saw a glimmer of hope in his eyes. Afterwards, I sat with Olivia in the living room, recounting the conversation. It's so hard to see him struggling, I admitted. Olivia took my hand. We'll get through this, Jack. Maybe we should look into family therapy. It could help all of us. The idea made sense. I wanted to do whatever it took to make things better for Jake. Yeah, let's do that. The following week, we had our first session with a family therapist. It was awkward at first, but slowly, we began to open up. Jake expressed his fears and confusion, and Eleanor and I reassured him that our love for him would never change. During one session, Eleanor turned to me. Jack, I have been thinking, maybe we should try to communicate better, for Jake's sake. I agreed. You're right. Let's work on that. It wasn't a quick fix, but over time, things started to improve. Jake seemed happier, and our co-parenting became less contentious. Olivia's support was invaluable, and I realized just how lucky I was to have her in my life. Through this process, I learned the importance of putting Jake's needs first and working collaboratively with Eleanor. Despite our past, it wasn't easy, but it was necessary. As Jake's therapy progressed, things were looking up. However, Eleanor's continued interference in my life with Olivia was an ongoing issue. Despite the positive strides we'd made, Eleanor often called or texted at odd hours, making it difficult for us to move forward peacefully. One evening, after putting Jake to bed, I sat down with Olivia. Olivia, I've been thinking, maybe it's time to take legal steps to set some boundaries with Eleanor. Olivia nodded, her eyes filled with concern but also understanding. I think that's a good idea, Jack. We need to protect our space. The next day, I met with a lawyer to discuss a co-parenting agreement. I hoped it would help us maintain a structured, respectful relationship for Jake's sake. At the meeting with Eleanor and our lawyers, tensions were high. Eleanor looked hurt, but I knew this was necessary. Jack, Eleanor said quietly, I don't want to fight. I just want to be part of Jake's life. And you will be, Eleanor replied firmly. But we need boundaries to make sure Jake grows up in a stable environment. The agreement was tough to finalize, but we did it. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders, knowing we had a plan in place. As time went on, things improved. Eleanor respected the new boundaries, and our interactions became more civil. Jake was doing better in school, and Olivia and I were growing closer every day. One night, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Olivia turned to me. You know, Jack, I'm proud of you. You've handled everything with so much strength and grace. I smiled, feeling truly content for the first time in a long while. Thanks, Olivia. I couldn't have done it without you. We decided to focus on our upcoming wedding, planning every detail together. Life was finally falling into place. Reflecting on the journey, realized how important it was to face conflicts head-on and prioritize the well-being of those we love. It wasn't easy, but the peace and happiness that followed were worth every struggle. If you found the story interesting, please subscribe to the channel, press the bell, and don't forget to give us a like. Thanks for watching. See you all soon.